Welcome back. Joining us now is Chris Southworth, the Secretary General of the International Chamber of Commerce, United Kingdom. He's a leading voice on global trade policy and digital trade innovation, and he played a key role at the inaugural Commonwealth Business Summit here in Windhoek. At the summit, Mr. Southworth moderated a compelling panel titled Navigating Global Trade Uncertainty and Commonwealth Resilience, tackling urgent issues such as trade tension, MSME financing challenges, as well as the need for deeper Commonwealth collaboration. He also contributed to an important conversation on paperless trade, what many are calling the next frontier in global trade facilitation. Mr. Southworth, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
I know you've had a long day. You've probably said a mouthful, but we need just a few more minutes of your time this evening, so we appreciate it so much. So starting with the session that you moderated that explored how Commonwealth nations can remain resilient amid these global trade uncertainties, what were some of the key takeaways from that panel?
Well, as international business, as anyone trading internationally, we're dealing with a volatile, unpredictable environment, primarily because of changes to US policy. What's important to keep in mind with what's going on in the US is it's only 13% of global trade. So the US in today's world doesn't have the power to dismantle the trading system. What's important is that the other 87% work together to stabilize that trading environment so that businesses can get on and trade and do business. Otherwise, the impact will affect all of us in terms of jobs, investment, and economic growth. Now, we've had strong statements from Asia in terms of APAC, ASEAN, and Europe on commitments to the multilateral trading system, really stepping forward. These are the new actors in trade in many ways. Also others like Japan and South Korea and China. The Commonwealth is important, and that's really what we've been really pushing for this week, is because the Commonwealth are the sort of connectors in the global trade. They're the glue that connects 5 different continents. It's 56 different countries. It connects G7 to G20. It connects the BRICS as well as what they call the G77, which is the global south, the emerging economies. The difference is you've got 56 countries who all have shared values. There's deep relationships. We all believe in the rule of law. And 80% of global trade is underpinned by Commonwealth law. 60% of global trade finance is underpinned by Commonwealth law, and 80% of shipping and commodity trade. So the Commonwealth play a really fundamental role in keeping that global trading system working. And what we're hearing really this week, especially this is good news for business, it's reassuring for business, is strong commitments from ministers, strong signals that they are stepping forward with, hopefully we'll get a strong statement tomorrow on reaffirming commitments to the global trading system. And then we spent a lot of time talking about digitalization, paperless trade, simply because that's the best way, the best pathway to unlocking $2 trillion worth of growth in the Commonwealth, but also enabling companies to be much more agile and resilient. In today's trading environment, it's incredibly antiquated, it's costly, it's inefficient, there's lots of paper documents. There's 8 billion pieces of paper are flying around the system on any given day. What we want to do is get rid of all of that because it just slows everybody down and it impacts small companies in particular with a lot of friction and puts companies off from trading. When you trade digitally, you can cut the times from an average trade transaction of 2 to 3 months to an hour simply by using technology. And you can imagine the transformative impact that has. It allows you to manage your cash better, you get more liquidity, you can move your money in and out of markets much faster, and of course that gives companies the tools to trade much, much better. And that's particularly important for continents like Africa, but also the Caribbean and Pacific and Asia as well, where those issues really do matter.
I just want to touch on, you mentioned small companies there, and I want us to just shift focus quickly to the MSMEs and the challenges that they're facing, but particularly when it comes to the areas of finance and accessing finance. What role, can Commonwealth partnerships, realistically play in addressing those gaps that exist?
Well, we've just been talking about that this afternoon, actually. Since 2008, the regulations have effectively cut small companies out of the system. The capital is too expensive. You have to tick a lot of boxes. It's very, very bureaucratic. And what's happened is that a trade finance gap has emerged. It's now $2.5 trillion. It's doubled in the last 2 or 3 years. And that's the working capital that small companies need for day-to-day cash. They can't access that, or they are forced into unregulated cash or more expensive cash. What we're talking about and we're suggesting to the ministers is a simple regulatory reform. We're calling for legal reform to make trade simpler, faster and cheaper, but we're also calling for regulatory reform to make the financial system much easier to access for small companies, because the regulatory framework is outdated. It goes back to 16 years. The world's moved on. The challenges are different. And then we've got this widening gap where companies just can't access the funding.
Yeah.
But if you remove the friction, the paper, and then you allow the working capital to get to the companies, they'll trade, for sure.
You also spoke about or raised the issue of geopolitical, tensions. So how are they currently reshaping global trade dynamics?
Well, the World Trade Order has changed fundamentally. This is not a temporary thing. The US is effectively withdrawing from the trading system. They're moving into a much more unilateral type of action. We've seen them withdraw from the G7 this week. We'll probably see more of that. And that has a tremendous impact. We've all relied on the US for 80 years as really the sort of anchor in the global trading system. What's interesting is that the rest of the world, we're now starting to see who are the players, who are the actors. And that's definitely the Commonwealth, but it's definitely also the Asian markets. China and Japan, like I say, Europe have suddenly now got around the table. They're resetting relationships. And that's really, really important, because that keeps that stability and predictability in the system, which is what companies absolutely need. Tariffs get the headlines, but it's the uncertainty that does the damage. Yeah. And so that stability is really important, and that's what will keep trade flowing for everybody.
Also talk to us, Mr. Southworth, about what you believe are the biggest barriers to implementing, the paperless trade. You explained in a nutshell really what it, encompasses. What are the barriers to implementing these across the Commonwealth nations? How do we overcome this? Yeah,
this is a good question. I mean, different ways, right? So in many ways, it's mindsets. We've all been trading in a certain way for a very long time. I mean, the trading system today isn't much different than it was 200 years ago. Yeah. It's the same pieces of paper with the same pieces of information. And so behaviors and systems are very, very embedded. And so we've really got to win hearts and minds to give companies the sense of trust that if you move into that digital economy, it's much faster. The younger generations, of course, understand this and expect it and don't realise just how archaic the system is. So that's number one challenge. Number two is really education and awareness. That's part of that. And that's the same for everyone, by the way. It's not just an Africa issue or an Asia issue. We all share that problem where we have to get out to companies, show them what they can do differently. And of course, with that will come the benefits. And then you've got some very practical challenges where we just need to work together. The trading system is a complex stakeholder environment. You've got everybody from governments to customs to insurers, financiers, the buyers and the sellers, who are the most important people of all, of course, and then all the freight and logistics and shipping. So we all have to move together, because if one party moves and the others don't, nothing changes. And that's one of the reasons why trade has not changed. So that's all about partnership between the private sector and the public sector. That's why organisations like the International Chamber of Commerce are getting involved, to help coordinate that joint action. Because we know that if we do, the benefits are tremendous. We're cutting transaction times 80%. We're cutting cross-border bureaucracy 80%. Improving workforce productivity 6%. These are huge numbers in terms of economic growth and productivity for everybody. We all win from that. But we've got to do it together in terms of reforming our laws. We need our governments to do that, but they need our help from industry to show them what we need to have happen. We know exactly what the problems are, and we know exactly how to fix it, and we can do it much quicker now than we could 4 years ago. And then in terms of the regulatory framework for finance, exactly the same. We've got to work with the regulators, work with governments, show them what the problem is, and then show them what the solutions are. And then we need governments to support us in terms of standardising all the information, because the information at the moment is all in different formats. Anyone who's old enough to remember what the systems when it was Microsoft for one computer and Apple for the other, it was horrendous. Yeah. You couldn't get a document from one computer to the other. Well, that's like trade. You're on totally different systems all the time. And what we're trying to do now is standardise the information, just like Apple and Microsoft did, and it absolutely will transform the ability to move information across platform systems and countries.
Well, just finally, Mr. Southworth, as this is the first time that the Commonwealth Business Summit has been held on African soil here in Namibia, what does this, signify for Africa's place in shaping future trade policy within the Commonwealth?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. That I think this is the first. Actually, we've got 3 African countries hosting major trade events, with G20 in South Africa, all the trade ministers meeting this week in Namibia. And then we're all coming back to Cameroon for the ministerial conference with the World Trade Organization in March next year. So the Commonwealth are in the hot seat. It's all happening in Africa as well. So this is a great opportunity to put a real spotlight on Africa. We all know the potential of Africa, but this is a fantastic chance to kind of really be led. The whole Commonwealth is led by a Secretary General from Ghana. So it feels very Africa-led, and I think people are really motivated by that we are here in numbers and we're working together and doing that on Africa's soil. I think that's a great opportunity.
Well, thank you so much for your time this evening, and we wish you all the best for the last day of the summit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was Mr. Chris Southworth speaking to us there. We're going to take a very brief break. We continue with more Commonwealth discussion after this.